The storm of static clawed through the dauntless comms array, a whisper threading itself through the white noise. Faint, desperate, human. Captain Marcus Hale leaned over the console, his jaw tightening as the distortion crackled again, almost forming words. Lieutenant Vega's fingers flew across the interface, amplifying and isolating the signal. Beneath the chaos, a child's voice broke through. It was soft, terrified, and impossibly far away. "Please, someone help us." The bridge went silent. Every officer turned toward the sound like worshippers before a ghost. Hale felt his pulse thud against the collar of his uniform. No one spoke for several seconds until Vega finally looked up, his expression pale and uncertain. "Origin trace puts it on a Valcor frequency," Vega said quietly. "Somewhere near the border moons of the Thera system. That's Dominion space." The name alone chilled the room. The Valcor Dominion had been humanity's most efficient enemy a generation ago, emotionless strategists who fought like machines and spoke of mercy as a myth. The war had ended, at least on paper, but the silence between the two species had never quite healed. Hale folded his arms, staring at the faint blue flicker of the signal analysis. "Valcor don't use human channels. What's the probability it's a false broadcast?" 89% if it's synthetic, Vega replied, but the waveform carries organic inflection. The voice is real. And young. A child's plea from a forbidden system. Hale's gut twisted. He'd buried the memory of another small voice long ago, a recording he couldn't delete even after his son's ship went missing during the first evacuations of Titan Base. This new sound clawed that wound open. He turned toward the main holoprojector. "Patch me through to the Valcor embassy on Arinder." Moments later, the alien visage materialized in the air, a tall, gray-skinned being with a lattice of silver lines pulsing beneath translucent flesh. High Counselor Threxel regarded him with eyes that did not blink. "Captain Hale," Threxel intoned, his voice devoid of inflection. "It has been years. To what do I owe this interruption?" "We intercepted a distress signal," Hale said flatly. "Origin trace points to Thera 9. The voice was human. A flicker of light crossed Threxel's facial pattern, the Valcor equivalent of a frown. "Thera 9 is restricted research property. There are no human presences there. Your data is wrong. Impossible. All human detainments were released under the peace accord." Hale leaned forward, his tone sharpening. "Then explain this." Vega replayed the snippet, the child's fragmented words echoing through the room. For a brief instant, Threxel's luminous lines dimmed, shock, or perhaps irritation. "Anomaly," he said. "Artificial mimicry. My people would not engage in—" "Enough," Hale cut in. "If your people are clean, you won't object to us verifying it." The counselor's eyes flashed with cold light. "Entering Valcor space without sanction is an act of war. I advise restraint." The transmission ended before Hale could respond. Vega exhaled slowly. "Sir, we can't go in." "Not without fleet approval." Hale's gaze drifted to the viewport. The Thera system shimmered in the void ahead, a ring of dead suns. "Fleet approval would take weeks," he murmured. "That voice won't survive hours." He turned, his voice hard. "Prep a silent jump. I'll take responsibility." "Captain, if command had heard that broadcast, Vega, they'd be already en route." The young officer hesitated, searching Hale's expression for doubt. There was none. With a terse nod, he began the sequence. The Dauntless shuddered as its drives spooled up. The stars blurred into streaks, then vanished into the deep tunnel of warp. The bridge dimmed to emergency hues. The crew said nothing. They all knew what this meant. They were breaching enemy space, and not for conquest, not for orders, but for something infinitely more dangerous: morality. Minutes stretched into hours. Hale sat in his chair, hands clasped, eyes distant. He remembered his son's laughter in the corridors of Titan Base, the way it echoed against steel walls. When he spoke, his voice was quiet enough to be mistaken for thought. "You ever wonder, Vega, why they fear us?" Vega glanced up from the NAV screen. "Because we won't bow." Hale's lips curved faintly.
No.
Because we care. They've built empires on logic and dominance, and we built ours on the belief that life matters, even the smallest kind. The ship exited warp at the shadow edge of Thera 9's orbit. The moon was a scarred husk, half-lit by a dying star, wrapped in electromagnetic haze. Automated defense satellites hung in silent formation, their signals faint but active. Thera 9 confirmed, Vega whispered. Power readings low but steady. There's something down there. Artificial. Hale rose. Deploy recon drones. Silent mode. The small probes darted out into the void, their feeds streaming back ghostly images of the lunar surface. What they revealed made Hale's stomach knot tighter. Vast grid patterns carved into the rock, glowing faintly in ultraviolet, like circuitry etched into a corpse. One of the drones dipped lower, scanning the fissures. Sir, Vega said, voice trembling. These heat signatures organic clusters. Roughly 50. Maybe more. Life pods. Possible. But the readings are weak. Contained.
Contained.
The word landed like a blow. Hale stared at the images. Long rows of dark structures buried beneath the crust, pulses of faint blue light tracing through conduits. Not mining facilities. Not laboratories. Something far colder. He straightened, eyes burning with a clarity his crew had never seen. They lied. Vega hesitated. What's our next move, Captain? Hale didn't answer immediately. Outside, the moon rotated slowly, its shadows cutting the Dauntless in half. He could feel the weight of his choices pressing against the hull. Mark coordinates, he said finally. We go in quiet. No transmissions, no weapons unless fired upon. I want to see what they're hiding. Vega nodded and relayed the order, but his hands shook. Sir, if this is what it looks like, if they really kept humans here, what then? Hale turned toward him, voice low but unyielding. Then we stop pretending the war ever ended. The hum of the ship filled the silence that followed. The Dauntless began its descent toward Thera 9, vanishing beneath the cloak of static storms. In the darkness beyond the viewport, the planet's shadows seemed to move, as if aware of the ship's approach. Vega muttered a prayer under his breath. Hale stood unmoving, watching the glow of the moon's surface draw nearer. He didn't know what they would find, but he knew this. Somewhere in that hollow world, children were crying. And he would hear them. The Dauntless disappeared into the storm. The descent through Thera 9's atmosphere was silent except for the growl of the Dauntless engines fighting electromagnetic interference. The storm shrouded them in shifting auroras of violet lightning. The crew spoke little, the tension wound tight as wire. When the ship breached the lower cloud layer, the surface emerged, an obsidian wasteland streaked with artificial veins of light. Hale stood behind Vega's chair, studying the readings crawling across the display. Landing coordinates locked, Vega said. No aerial patrols. Either they're confident in their secrecy, or nothing living wants to be here. Deploy masking field, Hale ordered. Set down near that canyon. The Dauntless settled with a hiss of pressure equalization. The landing ramp descended into air that smelled faintly of ozone and sterilized metal. Hale's boots crunched against the black sand as he stepped out, flanked by Vega and 4 armed Marines in matte armor. The wind was dead, the silence absolute. Thermal scan, Hale said. Multiple readings underground, Vega replied, eyes fixed on his wrist display. Deep, 500 meters. Energy output consistent with containment tech. Then, that's where we're going. They moved toward a fissure in the ground, an unnatural wound reinforced with alloy plating. A sealed hatch waited within, marked with Valcor script that shimmered when light touched it. Hale brushed dust away, tracing the alien characters with his glove. Containment Site 9, he translated softly. Authorized entry only. Permission denied, Vega murmured, and pressed the code scrambler against the lock. Sparks hissed. The door slid open with a hiss of stale air. They entered a corridor so sterile it gleamed, the walls alive with pale circuitry that pulsed like veins. The air was cold enough to fog their visors. As they moved deeper, faint vibrations reached their ears, a rhythmic hum, mechanical yet disturbingly organic. The passage ended in a vast chamber. Hale froze. Rows upon rows of glass pods stretched into the distance, each one glowing faintly blue. Inside floated small, motionless figures, children.
Dozens of them.
Tubes connected their bodies to conduits that pulsed with light, drawing energy upward into a colossal machine suspended from the ceiling. The hum intensified, like a heartbeat magnified through machinery. Vega's voice cracked. God, they're alive. Hale approached the nearest pod. A young boy floated inside, eyes closed, chest rising faintly. The readout beside him displayed alien symbols interspersed with human DNA markers. Hale's throat tightened. What is this? A metallic door slid open behind them, and a voice echoed through the chamber. Deep, composed, utterly foreign. This is preservation, Captain Hale. The squad spun around, weapons raised. The speaker stepped into view, a Valkor officer draped in dark ceremonial armor, flanked by drones that hovered like predatory insects. His face was angular and unreadable, eyes cold blue beneath a crown of bioluminescent filaments. Commander Vornak, Hale said. I should have known you'd crawl out from under a grave like this. Vornak tilted his head slightly, intrigued by the venom in Hale's tone. Grave?
Hardly.
This is sanctuary. Your species possesses what mine has lost, the ability to feel without fracturing. Emotion sustains us now. It is necessary. You're feeding off them, Vega said, his voice trembling with disgust. You're draining children like power cells. Vornak's gaze drifted toward the pods. They sleep without pain. They give what they do not yet understand. In exchange, the Valkor continue to exist. Hale's jaw locked. You justify this as survival? Survival is the only morality, Vornak replied. We did not choose to become what we are. We evolved beyond empathy, and without it, our neural cohesion decays. Their emotional resonance stabilizes us. You should thank us. We give their brief lives cosmic purpose. Hale stepped closer, lowering his weapon but not his fury. You took them from colonies. Families. You turned children into batteries. Resources. Vornak corrected softly. The word ignited something feral in Hale. His voice dropped to a growl. You don't get to call them that. The commander regarded him curiously, as though studying a specimen. You humans worship feeling. It blinds you. Yet perhaps that blindness is your strength. He turned to the drones. Expel them. The machines descended with a shriek of metal. Hale's team opened fire. Plasma bolts carved through the dark. Sparks and shards exploded across the chamber. One drone caught Vega's arm, sending him sprawling beside a pod. The glass cracked, fluid spilling out. A child inside gasped, a living sound, frail and terrified. Get him out. Hale barked. Vega, bleeding, tore at the seals until the glass gave way. The boy collapsed into his arms, coughing weakly. Hale's heart thundered, proof of life, proof of horror. He looked back toward Vornak. You're going to answer for this. Vornak raised a hand, signaling his retreating drones. You won't live long enough to bring judgment, Captain. This moon is a fortress of necessity. Leave now, and perhaps your species will remain unharvested. Not a chance. Hale slammed a charge against a nearby console. Vega, data copy now. Vega winced, clutching the rescued boy with one arm while his other hand danced over the terminal. Streams of alien code flashed across his visor. Got partial logs, authorizations, signatures. High council level. Good enough. Everyone fall back. The charge detonated, collapsing conduits in a shower of sparks. The ceiling groaned as systems went dark. Sirens wailed, Valkor alarms, shrill and alien. Hale and his men sprinted toward the exit, the rescued child held close. Vornak's voice boomed through the intercom, echoing after them. You cannot stop what sustains us. Compassion is a luxury of the abundant. When the stars grow cold, only logic endures. Hale didn't look back. Then we'll burn brighter, he muttered. They reached the surface just as the facility trembled beneath their feet. The dauntless ramp extended through the storm. Vega stumbled aboard, the boy limp but breathing. As the ship lifted off, arcs of energy lashed at its hull, but the pilot's hands were steady. The moon shrank below them, its glow fading into the void. On the bridge, Vega slumped into a seat, blood streaking his uniform. Hale looked down at the child resting in a thermal blanket beside him. His expression was stone, but his voice trembled. He's alive. That's enough for now. Vega glanced toward him. Sir, the logs. This wasn't rogue. The whole Dominion knew. Hale nodded slowly. Then we take it to the council. Outside, Thera. 9 vanished behind a curtain of lightning, the screams of its alarms fading into static. The Dauntless accelerated toward the stars, carrying a truth too heavy to ignore and a fury that would soon shake empires. The Dauntless drifted in orbit over Erinder Prime, its hull gleaming against the gold light of the capital world. Every deck was silent, the crew subdued by what they carried. In the medbay, the rescued boy slept under a thin stasis veil, his heartbeat soft but steady. Vega sat nearby, arm bound in synth bandages, his face pale. Across the room, Captain Hale stared through the viewport at the planetary spires below, each one a symbol of interstellar civility that now felt hollow. Command had ordered his immediate debrief, but Hale refused to hand over the evidence until he could present it before the full Galactic Council. His tone, when he made that demand, had left even admirals speechless. They had agreed, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of guilt. Now, in the council chamber, the galaxy's most powerful gathered in a crescent of light and shadow. Dozens of species observed from elevated tiers, their faces unreadable, their voices hushed. At the center dais stood Hale, rigid in his dark uniform. The Valcor delegation arrived in silence, led by High Counselor Threxel. His pale features glowed faintly under the crystalline dome as he regarded Hale, with detached composure. Captain Marcus Hale of Humanity, the council moderator intoned. You stand before us to deliver testimony regarding your unauthorized incursion into Valcor territory. Hale's voice was measured but cold. Unauthorized, yes. Unjustified, no. Your actions risked destabilizing the Treaty of Orion, the moderator continued. Do you have evidence to support your claim that the Valcor have violated galactic law? Without a word, Hale gestured toward Vega, who activated the holographic display. The chamber dimmed as blue light bloomed across the air. Images appeared, rows of pods, pale faces of sleeping children, the endless hum of the machines drawing life from them. Gasps rippled through the audience. Some delegates turned away. Others leaned forward, transfixed in horror. Threxel did not flinch. Fabrications, he said. The human captain has trespassed, and now he fabricates atrocity to mask his aggression. Hale stepped closer, his boots echoing on the marble floor. Then explain these signatures. He nodded to Vega, who projected a second image, the Valcor authorization codes, signed by Threxel himself. For the first time, the counselor's bioluminescent veins flickered unevenly. Those documents are taken out of context. The experiments were conducted in the pursuit of mutual stability. Emotional resonance is a vital. Hale's voice cut through like a blade. You imprisoned human children. Are you insane? The words rang through the chamber, vibrating in the glass and stone. Conversations died instantly. The echo lingered longer than sound should have, like the universe itself was listening. Threxel's expression froze. His species had no word for children. Their translation rendered it only as juveniles, a term without sentiment. We contained human youth to extract emotional spectra necessary for our survival, he said calmly. There was no pain, no suffering. They served a purpose far beyond their own capacity. Hale's jaw tightened. You call theft and enslavement purpose? Those are lives, not resources. Another delegate, a crystalline being from the Lissari Collective, leaned forward, its voice trembling. Is this true, Counselor? You harvested from a sentient species. Threxel spread his long fingers in an almost priestly gesture. We evolved beyond empathy. Without emotional input, our neural matrix collapses. You would prefer extinction. Vega's voice broke in, sharp with disbelief. Better extinction than becoming monsters. Hale turned back to the assembly. This is what peace has cost us. While we celebrate alliances and sign treaties, they drain the innocent for power. You all saw the proof. The Valkor have committed crimes not of war, but of moral annihilation. The chamber filled with murmurs. Some alien representatives whispered to each other, some retreating into their booths. The moderator raised a trembling hand. Captain Hale, your accusations. Not accusations, Hale interrupted.
Facts.
You think the law matters when the powerful decide what suffering is acceptable? When a species loses empathy, it doesn't need diplomacy. It needs to be stopped. Threxel's composure cracked for the first time, voice rising with icy anger. You speak as though emotion is strength. It is weakness. It clouds judgment, drives chaos. You humans wield compassion like a weapon, yet you destroy worlds with the same hand that comforts them. Hale stared at him, eyes cold as the void. The difference, counselor, is that we regret it. You don't even understand the word. The silence that followed was absolute. Hale turned back to the council, the images still flickering behind him, the pale faces of the children floating in blue light. You cannot stand for this and still call yourselves civilized. If you do nothing, then you are all complicit. A long pause. Then, from the far side of the chamber, a voice spoke, a gravelly tone belonging to a Saurian delegate. Human captain. It said, what is it you demand? Hale hesitated only a second. Immediate termination of all neural harvesting. Full release of any detained juveniles from any species. Stripping of Valkor sovereignty until reparations are made. Threxel's eyes glowed brighter. You would dismantle an empire over a handful of spawn? Hale's reply was quiet, almost a whisper. Over a single child. The chamber stirred. The words rippled outward like gravity, bending the room around them. Delegates from minor systems began murmuring in agreement. The moderator conferred with aides in hurried tones. For the first time in living memory, the Valkor found themselves isolated, the collective moral gravity of the council turning against them. Threxel stood slowly, voice trembling with restrained fury. You think this is victory? Compassion will not save you when entropy claims your stars. Logic endures. Emotion fades. Hale took a step forward. Then maybe that's why we fight. To make sure something good burns while the universe dies cold. He turned off the hologram and faced the council once more. You asked for proof. You have it. Now choose what kind of civilization you want to be. The chamber lights dimmed as the council went into closed session. Guards escorted Threxel away, his expression unreadable. Hale and Vega stood together at the center, the weight of a galaxy's judgment pressing down on them. Vega exhaled shakily. Do you think they'll act, sir? Hale looked up through the transparent dome at the pale light of the stars. They have to, because if they don't, humanity will. Outside, the planetary horizon flared with dawn. The Dauntless waited in orbit, its engines idle, holding the rescued child and the evidence of atrocity. Somewhere, deep in Valkor space, other facilities likely still thrummed with stolen life. Hale knew the fight wasn't over. Not by a long measure. But for the first time since the war, he felt something he hadn't in years. Hope, burning hot and human. Rain drifted down like silver dust over the rehabilitation world of Halion, its skies soft with pale blue clouds and thin sunlight. The warships that once scarred orbit had long gone, replaced by medical frigates and supply vessels. On the surface, domed habitats dotted the landscape, each filled with quiet laughter and the tentative rhythm of recovery. Captain Marcus Hale stood at the perimeter fence, the faint hum of its shield mingling with the wind. Below, children ran through shallow grass, their laughter fragile but alive. Among them was the boy they'd rescued from Thera, 9, no longer pale, though his eyes still held the memory of the blue pod's glow. Hale folded his arms, his uniform stripped of rank insignia. He had resigned his commission 3 weeks after the Council's ruling. The Valcor Dominion had been stripped of autonomy, its leadership tried for crimes against sentience. The decision fractured the galaxy's alliances, yet no one could dispute the images Hale had brought before them. Compassion had cost the stars their balance, but it had also redefined what justice meant. Behind him, footsteps approached. Vega joined him, arm fully healed, his gaze distant. "They're adapting faster than expected," he said softly, nodding toward the children. "Some even started dreaming again. The doctors say that's a good sign." Hale smiled faintly. "Dreams are where recovery begins." Vega hesitated before speaking again. "Command wants you back. They say the border's unstable. Without your leadership." "I'm done leading soldiers," Hale interrupted gently. "I've spent half my life teaching men how to survive wars. Maybe it's time I learned how to end one." Vega studied him, uncertain whether to argue. Hale's hair had gone grayer since Thera, 9, his face more lined, but his eyes had gained something harder to define, a peace born from exhaustion. They watched the children chase one another in spirals. The rescued boy stopped near Hale, holding a small metal disc in his tiny hands. It was the same alloy once used to seal his pod, now reshaped into a crude charm. He offered it silently, eyes wide with cautious trust. Hale knelt, accepting the token. "You made this." The boy nodded. "It's supposed to keep bad dreams away." Hale turned it over, the metal warm from the child's grip. "Then I'll keep it safe for both of us." When the boy ran back to his friends, Vega said quietly, "He doesn't remember much. Just flashes. But when he talks about you, he calls you the Captain of Light." Hale chuckled softly. "That's generous. I was the man who brought fire into darkness. Not all of it good." Vega shook his head. "You showed the galaxy what good really means." A voice interrupted them, an orderly calling Hale to the administrative dome. He gave Vega a brief nod and walked toward the structure. Inside, light filtered through transparent walls where hollow displays floated in silence. Waiting for him behind a containment screen was a familiar shape, Vornak, former commander of Thera 9. His armor was gone, replaced by a neutral robe, his bioluminescent veins dimmed to a faint gray. Hale stopped before the glass. "You asked to see me." Vornak inclined his head, the gesture restrained. "I wish to understand." "Understand what?" "Why you risked everything for beings with no power, no strategy, no consequence." "Children." Hale's gaze didn't waver. "Because they're everything we aren't yet, but could be." Vornak's features shifted, uncertain. "We never intended cruelty. We sought survival." "You lost your empathy, Commander," Hale said quietly. "Survival without empathy is just decay with better tools." Vornak looked down at his hands, faint light rippling beneath the skin. "Our evolution abandoned feeling. Now, perhaps, that was our true extinction." Hale studied him, seeing not the monster from Thera 9, but a weary creature trapped in logic's cage. "Maybe you can still learn. The children you harmed are being taught to forgive. It's harder than hatred, but it lasts longer." The alien's eyes flickered faintly. Forgiveness. An inefficient emotion. Hale gave a small, sad smile. "The most powerful one we have." He turned and left the chamber, leaving Vornak alone with the sound of his own slow, uncertain breathing. Outside, the rain had intensified. Hale stepped beneath its touch, feeling it soak into his uniform. He walked toward the field where the children now huddled under shelter domes, their laughter replaced by the soft hum of the storm. The boy spotted him and waved, the charm glinting in his small hand. Hale waved back. Vega approached again, voice raised over the rainfall. The council sent another message. They're establishing a task force, joint species effort to find and free any remaining captives. They want you to oversee it. Hale looked out at the horizon. A low sun glowed behind the storm clouds, painting the wet grass in amber light. "Maybe," he said. "But not yet. Let's make sure they can sleep without fear first." Vega nodded, understanding. I'll make sure the ship stays ready. Hale placed a hand on his shoulder. You've done enough for now, Lieutenant.
Go rest.
The stars will still be there tomorrow. When Vega left, Hale remained alone, the storm softening into drizzle. He opened his hand and looked down at the small charm. The edges caught the last light of dusk, shimmering faintly. In that reflection, he saw not warships or councils, but a promise that humanity's strength was not in its weapons or its defiance, but in the stubborn, fragile persistence of compassion. He closed his fist gently around the charm and turned toward the shelter, where the rescued children waited for stories before sleep. As he entered, their voices rose with questions about space, about Earth, about why stars twinkled. He answered each patiently, his tone warm, the storm outside fading to a whisper. Later, when the lights dimmed and the children slept, Hale stood by the viewport once more. Above the clouds, the night sky shimmered with distant constellations. Somewhere beyond them, the Valcour still lingered, rebuilding, perhaps remembering. Maybe that was enough. He thought of his son, lost to the void so many years ago. In the quiet, he whispered, "We brought them home." The wind sighed through the structure, soft as breath. Hale smiled faintly, the weight in his chest finally easing. The universe remained vast, dangerous, uncertain, but it was no longer cold. Not while humanity still remembered what warmth meant. Outside, dawn crept over Helion, painting the domes in light. The Dauntless waited in high orbit, its engines dormant, a guardian at rest. When the time came, it would rise again, not for vengeance, not for glory, but for the fragile, stubborn hope that even among the stars, innocence could endure.